The Dharma talk I want to talk about today is actually something that was inspired by something I was reading about the Dalai Lama a number of years ago. So there was sort of this article, and in it, the Dalai Lama was speaking to a group of kindergartners at his place in India there, and the children are asking questions of the Dalai Lama, and they ask him, "Oh, does he have any pets?" Right? It's a pretty standard kid question to ask somebody. And he said that he has cats and he has dogs, and he talked about them, and then he starts rambling about the animals in his life in general. And one of the animals that he talked about was mosquitoes. I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. And he said that these mosquitoes, they're not really his pets, but he does feed them, so he has a kind of a relationship with them there, right? And he says, they don't bother him, or rather, well, they do bother him, but they bother him not because they bite him. He's okay with that. He's not bothered by that, right? These mosquitoes bother him because they don't appreciate him. So I thought, wow, what is that? And I kept reading, and it said, so the Dalai Lama, of course, who's the head of Tibetan Buddhism, very noble and famous person, he says that when he's in a good mood, he'll actually go outside and he'll take off his outer robe so that the mosquitoes can come and feed on him, right? Yeah, he does this on purpose. And he's in India, right? He's in northern India, but still it's India, it's tropical, right? I imagine Indian mosquitoes must be about, the size of like a airplane or something like this. So he's got these mosquitoes, and he's taken off the robe. He's basically ringing the dinner bell for the mosquitoes here, right? And so he's okay with this. In fact, in Tibetan Buddhism, he's the Dalai Lama. His blood is holy, and if they bite him, then they're making a connection with the Dalai Lama, and through that karma, then in future lives, they'll go on to become enlightened. This is actually a teaching that exists within Tibetan Buddhism. So that's a really sort of unusual point of view, right? Out of compassion for their current need for food and their future possibility of awakening to Buddhahood, right? He offers himself to the mosquitoes as a meal. I thought, wow, that's some pretty big compassion there when I was reading about this. But the Dalai Lama didn't just, say, oh yeah, I let them come and feed on me, I'm okay with that, right? He said that after the mosquitoes bite him, he gets mad at them. So he lets them do it, but then he gets mad. And he's not mad in the way that I would be. I would be mad because I got bit and it hurt a little bit, and then afterwards I get a minor itch and this sort of thing, and I get a annoying sort of bump in this way, right? He's totally okay with that. That's not the big deal. He expected that to happen, and suffering is normal, so that's not what's bothering him, right? He gets mad because the mosquito comes and it bites him and then flies away without appreciation. So this is what he's thinking about here. So this annoyed him so much that he went and he made inquiries with neuroscientists to discover, is it possible for insects to feel appreciation, to even have these sort of emotions or these sort of thoughts in that way? He wanted to know about that, right? So when I read about this, I thought this was pretty humorous. I got a good chuckle out of it, right? But this is not actually really a story about the Dalai Lama as such. Rather, this is actually a story about myself and about how I am, which therefore means that this is a story about Buddhism. Because Buddhism is what helps us to understand who we are and how we operate, right? And how to sort of do our best and be our best in this world of difficulties and challenges. So this is something that I came to reflect upon when hearing about the Dalai Lama and his conflicted relationship with mosquitoes, right? When I reflect on the Dalai Lama's story, I find that I'm like this too, right? My own compassion is quite limited. I don't want to have mosquitoes bite me, right? Because it bothers me. And in order not to, have to put up with like a loss of a tiny bit of blood and a little bit of itching for a little while, right? Instead of having that little bit of suffering, I'm willing to squash and kill a living being just so I can avoid that sort of experience, right? These are not really equal I lose a little blood, I have a little itch, or you die, splat, When I think about this, I realize my compassion is quite limited. I've got a lot more compassion for my desire not to itch than I have for the mosquito's desire to keep on living. So honestly, if I did let it bite me, yeah, I'd have a little irritation for a little while, and then I'd forget that it ever happened, right? But when I kill the mosquito, it's dead and it's gone, and that's the end of its story, right? It's never going to fly again. And so I started thinking about this. Oh, am I doing something wrong by killing all these mosquitoes? So I investigated a little, and what I found out was not favorable for myself. Turns out that mosquitoes, the only reason they bite is to get blood for their eggs. So they're not feeding themselves by doing this thing, right? It's only the female mosquitoes who bite, and they only bite in order to get some blood, which is needed to nourish the next generation. They're not drinking it for themselves. And in fact, actually, it turns out that mosquitoes, both male and female mosquitoes, they actually drink nectar. And they only, like I say, they're only just getting the blood for the next generation. So if they drink nectar, then I realize, oh my gosh, actually they're pollinators for plants. And they help plants to grow and help flowers to blossom and this sort of thing. But I have to say, even though I know that mosquitoes are helping out the plants and they're only biting me because they're mothers who want to feed their babies and my itch is going to go away soon, I still smack them. This is what I'm like, right? So I live in Ontario, Canada, and this is a relatively wet environment, a relatively forested environment. We have mosquitoes, lots and lots of mosquitoes. Oh my gosh. And I like to go camping. So that means that for a number of weeks every year, mosquitoes and I are like on a head-on collision course. This is always going to happen. I know this is going to happen, right? And one of the main inconveniences of camping in Canada is, in fact, the mosquitoes that are all over, and they can really get you, right? So I have to say, it's not really fair, though, because I go and I complain about them, but the mosquitoes live in the forest. That's their place, right? I live in town. If a mosquito bites me and I'm on the back deck, that's one thing. But I get in the car and I drive off into their territory, and then I grumble about them, right? It's like if somebody came to my front door, pushed their way inside, started going through my fridge, set up like a little cottage in the living room or something. And then when I went to eat one of the donuts they brought with them, then they punch me in the face. That's basically the equivalent of this thing, right? I went into their home, into the forest, set up my tent, and then when they come around, naturally, oh, okay, time to feed the babies. I'm like, oh, you die, this sort of thing. It's terrible. Yeah, no compassion here. So mosquitoes and I are basically at war all summer long, and it's not really fair. They tried to bite me, I tried to squash them dead. Okay, but what if I was the Dalai Lama in this situation, right? What if I had so much compassion, like the Dalai Lama or someone like that, right? I know that if I had the same amount of compassion as the Dalai Lama, I could leave my jacket off, I could leave the bug spray off and everything. I could definitely let them come and eat me in the way that he does, right? It may sound strange or silly to do this sort of thing, but when I heard that story about him, I knew for certain that I could do that too. I really could. I'm not kidding. I could definitely let them come and drink my blood and everything, and I could be okay with it, right? But I couldn't do it if they just came and bit me and then flew away, right? Which is what they're going to do. No, I could not put up with that, right? But I know that I could let them come and bite me if they appreciated me, if they showed me some sort of thankfulness, like a real pet does, right? Like a dog or a cat. You feed them, and then you get some affection back from them. So there's some appreciation there. Actually, I don't have a cat, and I hear that maybe they don't show so much appreciation. I'm not sure. So the cat owners, I'll let you decide for yourselves whether this is true. But I'm sure they're more appreciative than a mosquito is, right? So the mosquitoes, they're not meeting my needs, basically, in this sort of thing, not like a real pet, right? So the problem isn't that mosquitoes bite me, it's that they don't say thank you. That's where the real issue is. I could put up with a little bit of a pinch and a little bit of an itch and this sort of thing if they were going to say thank you, right? So if I was some sort of great, compassionate, self-sacrificing Buddhist, like the Dalai Lama or somebody, then I would totally take my jacket off and say, "Hey, mosquitoes, dinner time, come and get it. Here I am," right? And then if they came up and they took their tiny little drop of blood, and they're going to feed their babies with it, and then if only they would then just fly up and put their little mosquito hands in gasho and bow, like this, and in their little buzzy voice would say, "Oh, thank you. We really appreciate what you did for us. We recognize your sacrifice." And then they flew off to lay their eggs. I tell you, I would not squish a single one. All summer, right? We would have a total peace accord between me and the mosquitoes if they would only do this. And I'd be so happy. I'd be happy that I was getting feasted upon alive by all these bugs in the wilderness. This would be great, right? Because I'd be thinking to myself, "Oh boy, Jeff Wilson is the greatest guy on earth. He willingly lets mosquitoes come and, feast on him. He offers his own body to them in this way so that they can live and give life to new generations. Oh, he must be some sort of bodhisattva." No. A Buddha, yes, definitely. That Jeff Wilson guy, yeah, he must be some sort of saint. This is what I'd be thinking the whole time because they're saying thank you to me, right? Because that's the sort of person that I am, actually, right? Because the mosquito doesn't say thank you, I'm willing to kill it and the eggs that it is carrying, right? And not just one, I will kill thousands of mosquitoes all summer long, and I won't feel a bit of guilt over this sort of thing, right? But if the mosquito said thank you, then my ego would be so happy. This is what it would take for me, right? Then that would change the whole situation for me, right? That's what the whole difference is, whether or not I feel like I'm being appreciated, whether my ego feels like it's being appreciated in the situation. So, the one who says thank you, I'm willing to let that live because it flatters my ego. And then afterwards, then I tell myself a big story about how compassionate and wise and, basically, awakened I am, when really it's just my ego feeling good about itself in this situation, right? That's just the sort of silly sort of person that I am. So to me, thinking about the Dalai Lama and the mosquitoes, this is all very much a Buddhist story for me because it helps me to realize what I'm like. And maybe you're like that too. So actually, while it's sort of funny to think about letting mosquitoes come and bite you and this sort of thing, that's not actually the deeper understanding that I want to suggest with this sort of story. Because so far in this setup, I've been acting like I'm maybe the compassionate Buddha who can let beings come and feast on me and everything, and maybe I'd be willing to give up some of my blood, but that's not really correct, right? If I think about it, I'm not really like the potential Buddha in this sort of story. If I want to be really honest and reflect on myself in the way that Shinran did, then I have to admit that really I'm not the person in this story. I'm actually much more like that ungrateful mosquito. That's much closer to the way I actually operate. So the truth is that in my life, I buzz around all day long, just annoying people and wanting them to do things for me in this way, right? And I take from others, but I rarely say thank you. I certainly don't say thank you to the degree that I actually receive. I don't even give back even just those words in equal measure to all that I receive from so many, right? I'm constantly feeding off of the support of others, constantly receiving from other people, right? I'm feeding off of all the resources of the earth, the air that I breathe, the oil that runs my car, the soil that helps the plants that I eat, and this sort of thing, right? And all the help from my family, my neighbors, my coworkers. These are the things I'm always taking in this way, and I'm not giving enough appreciation back in this way. So I'm much more like that unappreciative mosquito who is a bit annoying and leaves in this way, right? This is me buzzing around all the time. So sometimes, though, I'm suddenly awakened to the way in which I do rely on other people, and how a power beyond myself is always supporting me, always nourishing me, always helping me with my life. And when I suddenly become aware of that, and that very unequal relationship, I have to admit, at first, I usually have a moment of shock or shame, and I think, oh no, I've been taking, and certainly not giving back in the same measure. I'm not even recognizing and not even saying thank you enough for all that I'm receiving. I'm much more of the ungrateful bug than I am of the compassionate Buddha, feeding the world and sacrificing myself, actually, right? But then there's something else that happens too. I have that first moment of sort of shock or, disappointment with myself, right? But even as I'm feeling the regrets and even as I'm noticing my sort of foolish selfishness, then I remember that the Buddha's light is shining on me at this time as well, right? Shinran says that all people and all beings, even insects, these are his actual words, they all receive the light of the compassionate Buddha, and they're all liberated from their suffering. So when I realized that the Buddha embraces even sort of an ungrateful mosquito such as myself, that the Buddha embraces me because I'm not naturally grateful and I'm not naturally aware of all the things that I'm receiving, right? And that this is why there is the help of the Buddha there for me, then I feel very grateful because of that. So then something does happen, that gratitude does grow. And I think about that wisdom, that compassion, which is always coming and supporting me. And then there's a great sort of rushing flow of gratitude that wells up inside of me. And I find myself saying, Namo Amida Butsu, thank you, Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you for showing me who I am. Thank you for showing me what I'm like. And thank you for accepting me as I am in this way, right? Thank you for embracing me. Thank you for embracing the mosquitoes. Thank you for embracing all people in this way. Namo Amida Butsu, thank you. These are the feelings I have when I reflect in this sort of way. So I'm grateful to the Dalai Lama for talking about mosquitoes and his relationship to it, because it offers me the chance to think about how I am and how I might wish to be and how I might wish to operate. And I'm thankful to my temple and my family and all those who support me. And I'm thankful also for all of you and your patience and listening to my message this morning. So thank you all.